guys, how are you? I'm back again with a new story, and I'm so excited to read it with you. We've already started this in class together, so for you virtual learners, I'm going to get you on chapter 1 today. It is October right now, and so we wanted to think of a story that was a little bit spooky and a lot of fun. So the first story that came to my mind was Bunnicula. If you've not heard this story, you guys are in for a treat. So let's get right into it. Here we go. Chapter 1. Just as a little note to you guys, there's a lot going on with the characters in this story, and you're going to love the characters in this story because they're actually family pets. The character telling this story is Harold, the family dog, and his buddy is Chester, the family cat. So they're going to be telling you a story through their perspective as a dog and a cat. So sometimes the way they say and do things is a little bit funny and a little different than what we're used to. So keep that in mind as you listen, because as I'm reading to you as if I'm Harold, the family dog. So here we go. Chapter 1, The Arrival. I shall never forget the first time I laid these now tired old eyes on our visitor. I had been left home by the family with the admonition to take care of the house until they returned. That's something they always say to me when they go out. Take care of the house, Harold. You're the watchdog. I think it's their way of making up for not taking me with them, as if I wanted to go anyway. I mean, you can't lie down at the movies and still see the screen. And people think you're being impolite if you fall asleep, start to snore, or scratch yourself in public. No, thank you. I'd rather be stretched out on my favorite rug in front of a nice, whistling radiator. But I digress. I was talking about that first night. Well, it was cold. The rain was pelting the windows, the wind was howling, and it felt pretty good to be indoors. I was lying on the rug with my head on my paws, just staring absently at the front door. My friend Chester was curled up on the brown velvet armchair, which years ago he'd staked out as his. I saw that once again he'd covered the whole seat with his cat hair, and I chuckled to myself picturing the scene tomorrow, because next to grasshoppers, there's nothing that frightens Chester more than the vacuum cleaner. In the midst of this reverie, I heard a car pull up into the driveway. I didn't even bother to get up and see who it was. I knew it had to be my family, the Monroes, since it was just about time for their movie to be over. After a moment, the front door flew open, and there they stood in the doorway, Toby and Pete and Mom and Dad Monroe. There was a flash of lightning, and in its glare I noticed that Mr. Monroe was carrying a little bundle, something with tiny, glistening eyes. Pete and Toby bounded into the room, both of them yelling and talking at the top of their lungs, and Toby shouted, "Put him over here, Dad! Put him over here!" "Take your boots off. You are soaking wet," replied his mother, somewhat calmly, I thought, under the circumstances. "But, Mom, what about the—" "First, stop dripping on the carpet. Would someone like to take this?" Mr. Monroe, indicating the bundle with the eyes in his hand. "I'd like to remove my coat." I will, Pete yelled. No, I will," said Toby. "I found him." "You'll drop him." "I will not." "Will too." "Will not." "Mom, Pete punched me." "I'll take him," said Mrs. Monroe. "Take off your coats." But she became so involved in helping the boys out of their coats that she didn't take him at all. My tranquil evening had been destroyed, and no one had even said hello to me yet. I whimpered a little, just to remind them that I was there. "Harold," cried Toby, "guess what happened to me?" And then all over again, everyone started talking. All at once. At this point, I felt I must explain something. In our family, everyone treats everyone else with great respect for his or her intelligence. That goes for the animals as well as the people. Everything that happens to them is explained to us. It's never just been, "Good boy, Harold," or "Use the litter box, Chester," at our house. Oh no. With us, it's, "Hey, Harold, Dad got a raise and now we're in a higher tax bracket." Or, "Come sit on the bed, Chester, and watch this Wild Kingdom show. Maybe you'll see a relative," which shows just how thoughtful they are. But after all, Mr. Monroe is a college professor and Mrs. Monroe is a lawyer, so we think of it as rather a special household. And we are, therefore, rather special pets. So it wasn't at all surprising to me that they took the time to explain the strange circumstances surrounding the arrival of the little bundle with the glistening eyes now among us. It seems that they had arrived at the theater late, and rather than trip over the feet of the audience already seated, they decided to sit in the way back row, which was empty. They tiptoed in and sat down very quietly so they wouldn't disturb anyone. Suddenly, Toby, who's the little one, sprang up from his chair and squealed that he had sat on something. Mr. Monroe told him to stop making a fuss and move to another seat, but in an unusual display of independence, Toby said he wanted to just see what it was he'd sat on. An usher came over to their row to shush them, and Mr. Monroe borrowed his flashlight. What they found on Toby's chair was the little blanketed bundle that was now sitting on Mr. Monroe's lap. They unwrapped the blanket, and there in the center was this tiny little black and white rabbit sitting in a shoebox filled with dirt. A piece of paper had been tied to his neck with a ribbon, and there were words on the paper. But the Monroes were unable to decipher them because they were in a totally unfamiliar language. I moved closer for a better look. Now, most people might call me a mongrel, but I have some pretty fancy bloodlines running through these veins, and Russian wolfhound happens to be one of them. Because my family got around a lot, I was able to recognize the language as an obscure dialect of the Carpathian mountain region. Roughly translated, it read, "Take good care of my baby." But I couldn't tell if it was a note from a bereaved mother or a piece of Romanian sheet music. The little guy was shivering from fear and cold. It was decided that Mr. Monroe and the boys would make a house for him out of an old crate and some heavy-duty wire mesh from the garage. For the night, the boys would make a bed for him in the shoebox. Toby and Pete ran outside to find the crate, and Mrs. Monroe went to the kitchen to get him some milk and lettuce. Mr. Monroe sat down, a dazed expression in his eyes, as if he were wondering how he came to be sitting in his own living room in a wet raincoat with a strange bunny on his lap. I signaled to Chester, and the two of us casually moseyed over to a corner of the room. We looked at one another. "Well, what do you think?" I asked. "I don't think rabbits like milk," he answered. So that is not actually all of chapter 1, but these chapters are a little lengthy. So sometimes we may stop in the middle of where we actually are. So far we have met Chester, the cat, and Harold, the dog, and they have heard from their human family that they went to a late night movie and they found in a chair in one of the seats in the theater a little rabbit, a little, little black and white scared to death thing that they brought home. And so Chester and Harold are a little bit curious about what this little creature might be. So we'll have to read together tomorrow and see what they think and what's happening in our story. Until then, stay well out there, keep reading, and I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye!